In this next video on factoring, we're going to finally do what the title of the lesson implied. We're going to solve quadratic equations by factoring. So in order to do this, we have to understand something called the zero product property. The zero product property says if I have one thing times another and it equals zero, then either A, the first factor is zero, or B, the second factor is zero. So either way, one of these two things is zero, the product is going to be zero. So as I solve this quadratic equation, x squared minus 3x minus 4 equals 0, I'm going to solve it rather than by completing the square or any other method that we've learned so far. I'm going to solve this by factoring. I'm going to take a sum, three terms added together, and turn it into a product, one thing times another, so that I can then invoke the zero product property. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a product by factoring this expression. I know that both first terms need to be x. I need factors of -4 that add up to -3. I'm going to go ahead and put in -4 and +1 because -4 times 1 is -4 and -4 plus 1 is -3. Now this expression equals 0, so there's only one more step that I'm really adding to what we've already practiced, and that is the solving part. I've got one thing times another equals 0. Well, if I can make either part of this product equal 0, the whole thing equals 0. So I think to myself, what would make this factor equal 0? What number can I plug in for x that makes this equal 0? Well, that would happen to be 4. So x equals 4 is one option because 4 minus 4 is 0 times, who cares, it's going to be 0. In the same way, I think about what would make this binomial equal 0. Well, that would be -1. So -1 plus 1 is 0 times, who cares, the whole thing is going to be 0. So we end up having not one but two answers, both found by factoring. Let's go ahead and do one more. X squared minus 10x plus 16 equals 0. Again, solving by factoring. I start with a pair of parentheses. I know the first term in each will be x. Then I need factors of +16 that add up to -10. Well, that would happen to be -8 and -2, which means that the solutions to my equation would be +8 and +2, because if I plug in either +8 or +2, I have a solution. Okay, true statement. And you can even plug them back into the original and check it if you like. If I take 8 squared, let's say, 8 squared is 64. Minus 10 times 8, which is 80. Well, 64 minus 80 is -16, and -16 plus 16 is 0. Same thing if I use 2. 2 squared is 4, minus 20 is -16. -16 plus 16 is, once again, 0. Now, last portion, another thing we might be asked to do is to find the zeros of a quadratic function. Well, finding the zeros means now we're working with a function. So maybe instead of seeing 0 equals, like I would in an equation, I see y. Or maybe you'd see this symbol, f of x, the function notation. In any case, the idea is I want to find the zeros, which means I want to know what x value can I plug in that will make the output 0. So if I think about it that way, it's doing the exact same thing as I did up above. To find the zeros would mean, well, what makes this equal 0? Okay, well, I'll factor this into the same two factors that we had up above, x minus 4 and x plus 1, which means that the zeros of this function, or the solutions to the equation that we worked out before, are 4 and -1. The neat thing is that tells us that 4, 0 and -1, 0 would be points on the graph, because the zeros of a function are also the x-intercepts of the graph of that quadratic function. And that will do it for solving with factoring.